Hello, folks. Another episode of Burning Platform, and a real pleasure to have Robin Schaffer today. She is the queen of analyst relations, coaching, and advice, and so on. And we're going to spend the next 20, 25 minutes talking about the world of AR, especially as it applies to smaller firms, startups, and so on. Okay. Robin, why don't you kick it off and talk about yourself first? Brag about
Let
yourself.
me talk. Let me talk about myself, my favorite subject. So, as Vinnie said, I am an analyst relations expert after many, many years of doing just about every role you could do in B2B tech marketing. I discovered analyst relations about 15 years ago and fell in love. And that became my thing. I was always looking for a thing my whole career. I did a little of this, a little of that. And that became something that I felt like took advantage of everything else I had done. So I worked and dedicated myself to analyst relations at that point, worked for a couple of companies. And then in 2020, I decided to go out on my own. So now I have an agency and we just do analyst relations. We're a specialty. I have four people working for me. And yeah, we built a nice clientele and we deliver services mostly to the startup and scale up part of the market, not the bigger vendors. We do some work with larger vendors and we support them in different ways. But for the startups and scale ups, we basically run their whole programs. They give us I like to say we take the whole headache away from them and we allow them to just show up and shine in front of the analysts and support them all behind the scenes, all the things that have to be done for that to happen. And that's what we do. So love working with that segment of the market.
Well, Robin, let me start off by first of all thanking you. You did an advanced review of my new book
I did.
called The AI Analyst, and it has a character just like you in the book. Well, we'll come to that. Let's first talk about your business because that's a unique niche you have, right? Because they are not used to, they don't even know what Gartner is. They don't know what deal architect is,
Exactly.
how to differentiate. So let's start there. What does AR mean to startups?
Yeah, it is different. It's different than it is. Most mid-size and large vendors have established AR practices. They have a team, they have a person, they have a team, they have strategies, they have focus on that discipline, and they invest a lot of time and energy into working with the analyst community and getting mutual benefit from the analysts, and the analysts getting benefit from them. In the startup world, it's very different, as you point out. Most of them are not. I would say with startups, they either have never heard of analysts and analyst relations, or they misunderstand it. It's kind of one or the other. And very rarely do I come across somebody that really gets it, really understands the value and what analysts can bring to the table. So I do a lot of educating in the market, a lot of talking to people and explaining. So they'll come. I'll get an inquiry. I want to be on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. That's a very typical thing, and they're a little startup. And I say, time out. We're not going to get in the Magic Quadrant, but let's talk about what working with analysts can do for you. And it's usually very eye-opening because they come with one idea that it's about getting on a report and positioning, and then they're going to be famous. To understanding it is that's part of it, and that's the ambition, that's the North Star, maybe where we want to go. But analysts provide so much more value than just that, which is sort of the outbound marketing side of things. And I explained to them the value of having somebody that can give you feedback, that can give you insights, that can help you in various ways grow your business, whether it's helping you get your brand out there, validating you, doing case studies, consulting, helping you with your product roadmap, helping you with your strategy. There's so much that analysts can give that's going to help you be a stronger vendor and grow faster. And they start to realize that it is much more than just the dot on the chart.
Yeah, and I wrote a blog a few years ago. It said 1,000 points of influence, and I said,
Yes.
when I was at Gartner, I used to think we were kings, right? Clients only listen to us. When I left Gartner and started Deal Architect, I started working with them directly, and you find there are advisors in the mix. They talk to other CIOs. There are so many points of influence, and the Gartner input or any analyst input is actually
Right.
tiny because they have their own scoring sheets. They go through site visits, they go through reference calls and all that, right? So I think very few people, they've never been on the buy side. They don't understand what a complex project process it is.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it varies greatly by the technology you're talking about. Some technologies you buy with a credit card in the business
True.
department, the business area. And other technologies are so complex and huge and IT laden and confusing to buy that you need analysts. So a lot of times when I talk to a client, a lot of times I turn away startups and I say, I really can't help you because what you sell in the market you're in is not really influenced by analysts much or at all. The buyers are not there consulting analysts or reading analyst material. So I look to the clients, analysts thrive and are important in confusing complex markets. That's where CIOs, that's where buyers depend on them. And they depend on them more in larger enterprises. So larger enterprise as opposed to the SMB solutions, but a larger enterprise buying a solution is generally more conservative and generally moves a little more slowly and wants that kind of seal of approval before they make a big multi-million-dollar decision and investment. And that's where analysts are huge. And if you're a startup and you're aspiring to sell into the larger enterprises, you must work with the analysts because but enterprise buyers are not going to take a chance on a startup without some comfort, either from somewhere in the influences that they talk to. And an analyst validation of a startup is very powerful.
It is, but you gotta. I think a lot of them don't realize there's a finite amount of time, right? An analyst has X number of
Yes.
hours a day, and they are driven by what queries they're getting, right? So the more they hear from customers about certain vendors, the more time they invest. And they don't hear much about startups. It's a chicken and egg situation. So
Well,
it's
it's about the business problem. Like if you're talking to clients and they're having this problem and you're hearing them talk about this problem and none of the established vendors are solving that problem or solving it well. And you hear about this or you get approached by this startup that has a unique, different way to solve that problem. You as an analyst are very interested because your buyers, your customers are looking to solve that problem. So if I can get into your awareness because you only have finite amount of time. So I have to I have to find the right analysts, make sure you're relevant. What I do is relevant to what you cover. And then show you that this is indeed something that's going to be of value to the buyers. Because the buyers are what makes the whole world go round, what the buyers are doing.
and I can tell you there are certain buyers up, one-on-one conversations, they will tell me they go, we hate to stick our neck out for startups because if they go broke, then I have to go explain to my executive committee why I invested so much, or even if it's a little bit, just the bad press hurts my reputation,
Startups
right? So
Startups are risky. Startups are risky. And for a startup, if you intend to go that way, an analyst can be a way to mitigate that risk for a buyer.
yeah. Um, we were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you said the reputation is analyst firms are pay for play. Okay.
Yes.
When I was at Gartner, back then, I don't think the story has changed much, but tell me what you're hearing and what you tell them, and I'll give you my perspective on
Oh, good. I'd really like to hear what you have to say about it. I get the question almost every day. Well, almost every time I talk to a startup. is, aren't they really pay for play? I mean, how much do I have to spend to get the good coverage? And it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way with any reputable analyst firm or analyst, because they take Gartner. They depend on their on being unbiased and providing good recommendations to the buyers. That's their business model. They're not going to risk that. I don't care how much you pay them. I don't care if it's, you're a large vendor and paying them a lot of money. They're not going to bend to your will to please you because you paid them a lot of money. The tricky thing about it is that if you spend money with analysts, you end up doing better in their assessment, not because you spent the money, not because of the money, but what the money does is buy you access, and you get access to the analyst to have not only more conversations, but better conversations. Because you can have interactive conversations. You can ask questions. You can have discussions. You can talk about the market. You can get answers to the questions, the burning questions you have in your business of where you're going to go, and strategic questions, and how you're segmenting and how your messaging is going. You can get that feedback from an analyst. So you get this relationship, because it becomes, if you're just briefing, and briefings are free and you can brief any analyst, if you're just briefing and that's the only way you're engaging with them, briefings are one way, they're infrequent, you're only going to give you time when you have some real news, and mostly you don't have news very often, so it's very limited. When you have a paid relationship, you have more access to the analyst for better discussions. You also have access to their research. So if I want to understand what they think, so if I'm in one of these reports, or I want to get in one of these reports, I can read what these analysts are writing about it, understand the way they think, the way they talk, the way they understand the market, the way they perceive things. And then I learn from that in terms of how I need to talk to them and position myself. I also learn not only what I have to know to make that analyst happy, because that's true, but that's only a small part of it. What do I need to do to be a better company? And that's what analysts, the good analysts will help you do.
At Gardner, we used to say there's influence and there's intelligence, right?
Yes.
Every vendor and marketing person wants influence. Take my slides and put it into one of their reports, or just put me in the top right, right? Actually, intelligence is where analysts are far more valuable, because they get so many queries, they get so many briefings, and without breaking NDA rules and all that, if you give them time to explain how the market's changing, that is one of the best sources of information there is. So the intelligence part, I find, is not used well enough. But
I couldn't agree with you more. I would say even in large organizations, even in my history in large organizations, there's no appreciation for that intelligence side. Little appreciation. You, as the AR person, have to make that case all the time with the executives. They don't naturally get it. But once they work with an analyst, once they have that experience of learning from a good analyst, of sitting down with Vinnie and having their eyes open, then they start to understand it. It's a hard thing in the abstract to get.
one of the things that well, we'll come back to this a little bit more. The your point about pay for play. Here's my perspective.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
every analyst is slightly different. So I have different channels. I have 2 blogs. I write books. I've written 10 books. I have a video channel, Analyst Cam and Burning Platform. We are doing this for Burning Platform. Vendors presented my Analyst Cam. So if you look at my New Florence blog, which was about innovation and not just IT, but green tech and um, space and all kinds of STEM disciplines, most of the smaller vendors are mentioned there. didn't even brief me. I heard about them, I read about them, and they showed up on my blog. Okay. No commercial relationship at all. I would say 70 to 88% did not even have to pick up the phone and tell me to write anything about them. Okay.
Wow.
If you look at our analyst cam, about 20% of them are startups. No relationship with us. They come to me through a referral, Workday Ventures or somebody else, and I will say, absolutely, come and present. No commercial relationship. If you want continued relationship, then then we can talk about the analyst commercial relationship. If you want me to come to an event, now that's when I'd start to put some ground rules. I'm not going to invest 3 days and then write and run videos and all that without a commercial relationship, right?
Yes.
My pushback sometimes comes is somehow the vendors think analysts have to be like independent AP news. Why should we pay for everything? These guys are supposed to be independent. Yes, you are, but our time isn't free. You got you can't just, So I think there's a little bit of the expectation that analysts should just cover us for free, and that's not how the world works. So
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of that, and they think that they can pay for it. They can buy your coverage. Like they can't buy your positive coverage. They can buy your attention. They can buy you to come to a conference. They can engage in a commercial relationship that an outcome of that may be that you write about them, but they can't come to you if you're reputable. They can't come to you and say, here's a check, go write good things about me. It doesn't work that way. That's what I think is the misconception.
you can't buy the outcome. They're looking for
Right. Can't buy the outcome.
You can buy the access to the channel, right? When I write books for executives, right? I'll tell them the case studies are going to be your customers. Introduce me to your customers. But they've got to make an impression to show well in the book, right? It can't just be, I can't take your case study and just put it in my book. I have to interview them. And so, it's a back and forth, but I can see why people say pay for play.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, I want to talk about your book because you gave me that advanced copy of the book, the AI Analyst, which was so exciting to see this little world of AR be featured in a novel. That was so fun. And the character you build, the analyst and his backstory and the whole thing of Silicon Valley and the billionaires, and you create a whole world that, is so familiar to me. And you set a novel in that world that was a lot of fun.
Well, so it is about, like you say, it's about a billionaire of in Silicon Valley AI and automation company, Polestar, who disappears. And, we are so removed from the world of kidnapping and crime and so on and as you see in the book, the FBI thinks this guy's absconded, right? Because surprisingly, if you look at the FBI's most wanted list, a shocking number of them are wanted for cyber crimes. Our industry is a lot of scumbags, right? So that is Barry Roman is the CEO. That's one main character. Patrick Brennan, on the other hand, is an analyst who used to work for this guy.
Right.
And he's on the analyst side of the house, and he works for a company called Oxford Research. Well, his firm has a set of labs that has worked with the FBI. So one thing leads to another. He gets embedded in the search and investigation of what happened to Barry. And so, there are the suspects, and this guy helps them go through a whole laundry list of suspects, including the estranged wife, including a disgruntled former executive, including Chinese intelligence, including the mob. And so it's a whodunit, and yet it's woven into our industry. Who writes about enterprise software, right? Who writes about analysts? So
right.
that was a little bit of a challenge. I had a co-author who was ex-Oracle. So, between the two of us, we have a fair amount of knowledge of the industry, and she knew California pretty well, and I know Florida pretty well. Those are the means setting
Right.
book. So
Right.
it all came together. Yeah, it was fun and yet very challenging to write the book.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
So let's keep going through this. Another thing you mentioned to me was, Vinny, they don't seem to realize that it's not just Gartner. There are hundreds of you guys
Yes.
out there. So how do you help them navigate this crowded space?
This is a great question, and something that we do with our clients. We do it pretty intensely in the starting up stage. Is we do a lot of research on this analyst. There are about 10,000 analysts and about 1,000 firms. People that have shingles out and are analyst firms. And we have a specific proprietary database of analysts and their coverage areas and their firms. And we, use AI, and we use the tools to try to understand who is covering this area, who's writing about the area, which may or may not be related to their actual formal coverage, but they're writing articles that are relevant to you. Who's writing about your competitor? Who's covering your competitor? And we try to identify a long list of analysts, and we use a complicated process to actually rate and score them by their influence, by how important their firm is. So we have different measures because the bigger firms get more weight, right? They just have more leverage. We look at what they've written, and we looked at their reports. The authors of the reports get extra, the reports that are even though that startup is not going to necessarily get in that report, the fact that the author of a report in that space is going to be very important to them, because they want to eventually, they want to build a relationship with that analyst. So we do a lot. What I believe is that a firm should not have more than 7 analysts that they consider tier 1, that the individuals, I don't mean firms, but 7 individuals. So they might have a couple from Gartner, a couple from Forrester, a couple from IDC, 1 or 2 from each of those, and then a few independents, a few that would round out that tier 1. And the thing about tier 1 is those are the ones you're going to give the most love to. They're the ones you're going to be very proactive with. They have a reason. There's a reason they're tier 1, because they have certain impact on the market, or they have knowledge, because what you want is a very knowledgeable analyst that can help you with your strategy so based on what your business priorities are. If I should have started with that. We start with what the business priorities are. Look at those priorities and understand how analysts can help with them. And analysts can't help with all of them, but which are the ones that analysts can really help with, and how can they help? And how can we build an AR program to drive and move the needle on those business priorities, not just do AR for the sake of AR, because that doesn't, do anybody any good. So a small part of it might be who's writing the big reports, and I'm going to get on that report is an objective for the AR strategy. But it very well is be getting the knowledge and the intelligence that you need for the business is a priority, and that would be different analysts, different individuals, and they don't have to have the big brands, because that's not important for the intelligence. The intelligence is that individual's experience and knowledge of the space. So we do a pretty complicated research and prioritization to come up with, and then I always tell the clients this is
close to having a co-pilot.
Exactly, and we do that. We do, but the tools aren't all as where we'd like them to be yet. But yeah, this is a prime example of where AI helps you think through this very complicated kind of multi-dimensional problems of who are the right analysts. And then I always tell the clients, this is what we're going to start with. This is a guess, because until we start to engage and have conversations, and you see who really cares about the problems you're solving, and wants to work with you, who is genuinely influential, who has the knowledge, who do you click with? and we start to engage, and that moves around, and people might pop up into tier one or pop down, and then it gets pretty stable after about 6 months. It's pretty stable, and unless your business priorities change, the analyst coverage changes, something changes there. It gets pretty stable because you want that stability for the relationship. You want some long-term aspect to it.
Another thing we talked about was what does an analyst firm produce that's most useful, right? Is it the big reports? Is it individual research reports? Is it some of them give you access to leads and so on? Have them prioritize that. Because I want to tell you other channels that I don't think vendors seem to appreciate as much. But go ahead.
Yeah, so it is definitely going to be dependent on those business priorities. What are they trying to do? If this is a company who's trying to get their brand out there, and the brand awareness is the most important thing, and they qualify for those reports, because the reports may be important to you, but you don't qualify for it. You're never going to get on that report for 3, 4, 5 years. You're not going to show up on that report, or there's no report in your market, in your space. So it really depends on the space that they're in, where they're positioned in the space, and what they want to get out of it, because the reports are very, very important in selling to enterprises and getting in short lists. If you don't have the brand awareness, if you get on a report, you're not a household brand, and you get on a report and show, even if you're in a niche quadrant, the reports only cover the top 15 vendors in a space, the maximum. I think the maximum is 15 that they'll cover in a typical report. There might be hundreds of vendors in that space. So if you're even on the chart, you're in the cream of the crop. So getting there, that's what the buyers are going to look at to, one of the things. I mean, they have 1,000 points of influence, right? But one of the things they're going to do is understand where you're positioned in the report, that you're on the report, and that they should either talk to an analyst to learn more about you, talk to you directly, and see if you're a fit for them. So the reports definitely play a role. They are an enormous amount of work for the vendors.
I'm glad you brought that up.
It's enormous. You can't minimize that. If you want to participate in a report, there's usually 3 parts: a hellish RFI spreadsheet with hundreds or thousands of questions that you need to answer. And then you have your chance for a briefing demo where you get to show yourself off, and you have to do it well. So a lot of time that takes up a lot of time to prepare that and be ready to use that. People are like using that time really well because it's a snapshot. And then your customer references, which may be on a peer review site like Gartner Peer Insights. They may look to that for your customer references, or you may be required to share 3, 4, 10 companies with them for them to interview. And that's all a lot of commitment from a company. They have to be really seriously want to be in this report to put that effort in. And when they come out and it's a good outcome, this is a great thing that they can leverage in the market.
It's another thing that I brought up in the book was when I was at Gartner, it was a little bit different. Now, I was there from 95 to 2000. So the Y2K rush, Robin, I did 2,000 calls a year for 5 years.
That's
crazy. I don't know. I look back and I go, I don't know how I did it, but when you have that much data points, reports write themselves. One criticism I have of analysts today is, how come your channels aren't giving you these signals? Why are you making vendors spend 3, 4, 5 months giving you all this information? Your level 1 analysis should already be done based on your data points. So that's a little bit of my frustration.
It's interesting. Yeah.
right? Like, guys, why do you make them go through all the little minutiae when you should have all that from your own signals, right? So, but
That's interesting.
um, the couple of things that I don't see a lot of vendors seem to realize is I help some clients on an advisory basis, right? They won't make it to the short list. They won't even know I'm running an evaluation, but I can bring them in as a niche player if I know something about them, right? So sometimes you
Mhm.
brief without expectation that, hey, something is going to come out in 2 months, a report or whatever, right? Sometimes you
Yeah,
just to keep the analyst aware of who you are. A lot of vendors don't seem to appreciate that. The other
interesting.
thing is I write books, and in the books, I'll work in 5, 10, 15 small vendors. They'll only get a little paragraph. They don't even know
Hmm.
I'm writing this. Some of them don't even know that they're in a certain book. Executives read these books and suddenly a little, well, who the hell is this? Then he talked about this guy. Just run a quick Google search, right? So is that going to bring a lot of business to them? No, but there is the um, never hurts to have come to the knowledge of certain key buyer executives, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of ways, a lot of different ways analysts influence the market and are part of that ecosystem.
yeah, and we touched on the amount of effort. I don't know if that much effort is worth having 10 pages in a market report. But then what do I know, right? I just think
It's
it that needs to be that whole process needs to be re-engineered by analyst firms. It's unfair to expect vendors to assign 1 or 2 people 3 or 4 months.
it's a big ask. It's a big ask. And then if you're not even sure you're gonna perform well in it, you have to look with open eyes at where you think you're gonna end up and make sure that you're okay with that. Because a lot of people don't want to be in that niche quadrant, that's the lower quadrant or the challengers and Forrester, whatever the lower bottom part is. Again, it's significant to even make the chart, so you should feel good about it. But a lot of executives see that as a negative if they're not, positioned as a leader.
But it's something, Robin, in your role as an AR coach guide, you should talk to other similar people, Duncan and a bunch of others who do similar
Yeah,
stuff. And you probably should go to Gardner and Forrester and say, guys, it's way too much effort. Re-engineer your process. I don't think that's a unreasonable request for you to
I
make.
think it's a very reasonable request. I think it's a good point. Sometimes you're so into it that you just think that's the way the world is, but that's not the way the world needs to be. So that's a good thing to bring up.
Robin, this has been fantastic. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. It has been great. I've really enjoyed talking to you all the time, Vinny, and this has been a lot of fun. I guess the final thought is just to remind everybody that analyst relations has a lot of parts to it. And it's very easy for people to see that the dot on the quadrant or the dot on the big report is the only thing that's important. And a lot of people come away with that that's the only thing that matters and that's what their goal is. And it's an okay goal. It's a good goal. It's a good goal. It's a good North Star for people to have. But that there is so much more value that people can get from so many more firms than just the big ones. And there are so many analysts out there and so many ways that can help your business, not just in getting into a report, good thing, we should do that, but in helping you with feedback about the business, helping you with content to support your marketing goals, to help you with strategies, help you write books as you've done, Vinny. There's just so many angles to it. And I always start with my clients and say, tell me about your business priorities. Forget about analysts for a minute. What is it that you need to do in the next 12 to 18 months? Let's get that list of things and let's look at how an analyst relations program can help you move those priorities. Because just engaging with analysts for the sake of it does nobody any good. They need to be working with you and helping you move the priorities of your business. And that's what I encourage everybody to think about.
Robin, that's a great statement. And, having just written this book about analysts, and don't forget that they're humans, both sides. There's a
Yes.
lot of human emotions. It's very we think we're very analytical. It's actually a very emotional industry. So the more you can be respectful of that, we socialize with vendors, socialize with analysts, and so on. But I think the human element is missing. Like you say, we focus on the data a little too much. You forget that that
Yes.
data is a composite of thousands of interactions and emotions and so on. So
It's the typical thing where it's the top of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's what you see, and the iceberg is all that goes on behind the scenes to
great point.
bring the value of analyst relations to your business.
Great point. Thank you, Robin. We need to do this every year. Come back. Please come
Okay,
back.
I'm in.
Thank you.
All right, take care.